Hey guys, Frizzy Brony here. We're back with another episode reaction, review and thoughts on, and this is coming towards the end now, the last Cutie Mark Crusader episode of essentially the series and the show. We're at episode 22 on this one, and oh boy, it's a fun episode, don't get me wrong, and I'm not finding it easy to articulate here without saying the same thing I said a lot before. It's a good episode, but for what seems to be the last Cutie Mark Crusader episode, it gives us what we've always wanted to see, and yet it's done in a way that we don't want it. Which has happened a bit this season, and I think it's because we know it's the last, technically, of the show. The comics have said they're doing a season 10, which is always nice, but for this being the last animated season of the show, essentially, before we move to the next generation, yeah, there are a lot of things in this episode, but I think we should start from the beginning, as we always do. So we start seeing the Cutie Mark Crusaders at their clubhouse, planning a day trip. After all, they've been looking forward to this for a while. It is the Appaloosa County Fair. And they're going through the rigmarole of doing all their checks. They've made sure they've got the tickets, they've made sure they've actually arranged the train, they've got everything planned, and it seems like the day is going to be absolutely fine. Apart from one thing.
Weeks of planning
Rarity
has
doesn't
all come
plan.
down to this. All we have to do now is wait for our chaperone to get here.
Oh no, who's it going to be? Is it Applejack?
So when's Rainbow Dash coming? I thought you were gonna ask Applejack.
Oh.
I don't suppose you asked Rarity? You mean we spent all this time planning a trip and none of us asked any pony to take us?
Whoops. They forgot to book their chaperone, and so their children, they're not allowed to do it on their own. For some pretty stupid reasons, I'm not gonna lie, because wasn't Babs sent on her own on the train? Without a chaperone, which was seasons beforehand. Yet now they're using the excuse that they can't do it because they're too young. I don't know, it seems they're forgetting that a little bit, or the parents just think Babs are a lot more capable.
In our defense, every other part of the trip was planned really well.
Ooh, Sweetie's getting mad. So we see them go to each member of the main six, or most of them. Funny enough, Pinkie Pie is actually absent. But they try to arrange their chaperones and see if they can't salvage it at the last moment by going around to Rarity and Rainbow Dash, Applejack, and for a variety of reasons, they can't do it.
I promised to deliver a new design to Fancy Pants for his Monocle and Top Hat Appreciation Society soiree.
I want to be a part of that. Getting on a train isn't that
but
hard.
I just heard from Spitfire that a whole bunch of storm clouds got loose from the Cloud Factory, and she needs every Wonderbolt to help bust them.
I wish I could, Sugar Cube, but Big Mac's not feeling well today.
Aww.
But Mac's old enough to take care of himself, and we'd all have so much fun together.
Now they do have the foresight to ask Fluttershy, someone who isn't their usual guardian, but she also says she can't do it because she's going to be helping Twilight, which means that they already know Twilight's out of the question, but they go to ask her anyway, and naturally they get a no. But this is where we set up the MacGuffin for this episode.
I'm afraid I am. Star Swirl sent me this enchanted flower and it isn't doing well.
Oh no.
If I figure out its magical properties,
Beauty
maybe I
and
can
the
save it.
Beast.
So that's a no on going with us to the fair? We've already asked Applejack, Rainbow Dash, and Rarity, and none of them can come.
This magical Beauty and the Beast-esque flower, which even when it comes down to identifying it, they list it down as potential hokum. It's in one of the book titles. But because Starswirl has asked Twilight to look into it, her and Fluttershy are spending the day trying to figure out what this flower is. And so while they go to find their research manuals, they leave the girls. And, things happen. Oh. Oh, teenagers! Actually, no, they're not teenagers. Her wings are still tiny, though.
Do you know what this means? We can go to the fair!
So it turns out this is a magical wish-granting flower that only has 2 petals left. Although the mechanics of this flower seem a little bit wonky because despite the fact that it grants wishes and there's only 2 petals, the girls make 3 wishes and that only takes up 1 petal, so magic, I guess. But now we see that the Cutie Mark Crusaders are big. They are adolescents. In fact, by their own wishes definition, they are the same age as their sisters. Which is actually really nice to see because this is what I mean when the fans wanted to see this one. This is the moment that we all wanted to see throughout the series. As we started with the CMC, we wanted to see them grow up, and we thought by the end of the series, we would see them coming out of their full sort of forms and into the more mature, adulter iterations. And so to see them actually there, with not too many drastic differences, just a little bit deeper voices and a little bit longer manes, was so good to see. And seeing their interactions actually being adults is precious.
I hope you brought the tickets. We've got to hurry if we're going to make the train. I think we'll be fine. Check out how fast we're going.
Weird.
Grown-up legs are strong. You're not kidding. I don't know how much of this my scooter can take.
So now they are adults. They can do anything they want to. They can take the train unsupervised. They can go where they want. They are big now, and they make that a point. With one of my favourite but least favourite tropes going through, the amount of times they say the words grown-ups. I want to start a drinking game on this episode alone that you take a shot every time they say the word grown-up. But they manage to get to the train, and it leads to what I've got to admit is a pretty catchy musical number.
This sounds like another song I've heard somewhere.
So the musical number ends and we see that the train arrives at a destination. However, it is not Appaloosa. And I do have to wonder how the trains in Equestria works, seeing as they at the start said they had bought their tickets for the train to get to Appaloosa. Yet they get off at a stop that is not Appaloosa, despite the fact that as a conductor on the train it should be the conductor's job to announce what the stops are. And then even when they get there, they should recognise that where they are is not Appaloosa. But it sets up a character that I have no idea why he's there other than to be ominous creepy guy, but I love him.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but you 3 must not travel much.
Hello,
This
Mr.
is
Conductor.
AC Junction.
Now I know this is to set up the plot point from earlier with all the reasons that Twilight said, because even the creepy old guy says there are 2 ways that you can get to Appaloosa. You can either follow the path, which is treacherous, very dangerous, and yada yada yada, or you can walk on hoof, or technically wait a few hours for the train, although they don't want to do that because by then the day would be wasted, wouldn't it? So, they start to walk, and we get a reprise of the musical number in the more ominous tone, which is something I thought they would have saved for later. But we see that the CMC aren't quite adjusted to adult thinking. They're still pretty much going on the we're young, we can do whatever, and we'll get into scrapes and someone will sort it out situations.
Oh, jeez. Oh, well done, Sweetie Belle.
Now, through all this kerfuffle and muddling, they manage to find their way out to the path once again and run into 2 younger characters. The foils for this episode. I can't remember their names because they're pretty inconsequential. I think one of them was Spokes? I don't know. One of them had the cutie mark of a pie though, and that was kind of... I guess his name is Pie. Wasn't pie related? I can't remember, I'm sorry. But they say that they're going to the fair as well. And this is where the Cutie Mark Crusaders really come into their element of pushing the grown-up trope.
Hold on. Us grown-ups need to confer. What do you girls think? If they go to the fair, we can tag along. And Spurt probably should cheer Bluefy. I mean, That's something a grown-up would say, right?
I've never once spoken to my friends and said,
ponies,
as
we
a
think we
grown-up.
should share Bluefy and let Biscuit take him to the fair.
Me and the grown-ups
That
need
is
to
some
talk.
quality grown-up advice.
Grown up this, grown up that, I'm a grown up, you're a grown up, blah blah blah. But we actually managed to get to the Appaloosa Fair, and this is where the girls show that they really aren't grown ups at all, as they immediately just start going to town at the fair.
What do you grown-ups think?
They're acting like children still.
Now I should set up that the big foil for the other two characters that are joining them is that they have this mysterious pet in a box, and they're trying to split the care of it, and they don't know whether they should keep it a private matter or whether they should take it to the fair. One says do, the other says don't, and they make it a point that the boy basically only wants to take it every now and then, but she's the one who does most of the caring. Yet he wants to take it into a crowded environment, she doesn't, so we know that something's going to go wrong with this pet, but we don't know what it is. It's in this little box, although we can see that it gets rather hyperactive. And while he's taking it off at the fair, while the girls are running amok, we see the sister, I believe, trying to find him so that they can sort it out, because he seems to be going off to try and enter the pet into a competition.
That's why I came to find you.
The irony of Scootaloo of that is not lost on me.
It's one thing to bring Bluefy to the fair, but it's another to stick him in a showcase.
Luckily, they managed to find him in time. Sadly, they don't do enough to enforce that they should not actually stop and not put him into the competition. And so this is where things get a bit heated, because we're going to skip ahead to when the competition starts, and we finally get the reveal of what this pet is. And I can't remember the name now, but it is an adorable little whirling dervish of Pekingese cuteness.
What the hell? It's a Pekingese!
Are you sure you're not just upset you have to share him?
But this is where things start to devolve and get a little bit crazy, as it seems the excitement is too much for this little creature, and it just can't contain it all.
Aww. It is adorable.
Me and my big grown-up mouth.
Oh. Oh my.
And this is where everything comes crashing down, because the CMC do not know what to do at all. They're panicking, the public are panicking, the kids panicking. Everyone is just having a little bit of a freak out. And so we see the destruction this thing causes as it basically turns into a hurricane going around the Appaloosa Fair. Mainly staying in the arena, actually. I say going around the fair, it stays in the arena, so it is contained at least. And this is when the Deus Ex Princess and her companion arrive.
I hope you're right about the girls coming here.
Well, once we read Shadetail Evergreen's warning that the flower grants wishes,
Oh no.
it wasn't a stretch to think they wished themselves to the fair. It's all they were talking about.
Wait, really? You making that big assumption?
Too young to come. They wished to become grown-ups, then came here and caused some kind of
Wow.
trouble that led to a
There is
town-wide
suspension of disbelief, and then there's this.
Yeah, or that.
They just had to make that leap in logic that Twilight assumed that they wished to go to the fair and that they would have probably caused some kind of trouble because they're not used to being in the big bad world. Lo and behold, they were correct. And I will say that my suspension of disbelief on that one bit broke. I don't see how they could have made that one. But we see that Twilight and Fluttershy at least make their way down because it's easy to see where the destruction is. And so they get there and find out what the situation is.
Goodness, a whirling monk tooth. They are very rare and just the cutest little things when they're not excited.
Now, the initial problem is the only way to calm the creature is for its carer/handler to command it to stop or to calm down. And the boy readily admits that his sister is the one who mainly takes care of it, and so it won't listen to him. Well, they seem to act pretty well under his command for the animal obstacle course that was there. But I guess we have to bring the other one back somehow. So Fluttershy goes off and finds her, brings her back to the stadium, and they manage to coax and convince this creature back into its little box.
He mostly just needs to see you. Hey there, Bloofy Boo. It's okay.
I kind of want one.
So the day has been saved, everything has been resolved, and despite all of that destruction that happened, this little creature still managed to win the blue ribbon for most unusual pet. Which, why is that still going on after all that destruction happened? I don't know. Seems unfair unless that creature was the last one on the list, in which case then there were no other contestants. But that's not what we get hung up on. At the moment we have Twilight and Fluttershy now fully able to understand the ramifications of what's happened with Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo. And luckily they brought the MacGuffin with them, this magical wish flower, and they allow the situation to be completely resolved.
There's only one petal left, but I think the three of you know what to wish for. And I'm pretty sure Star Swirl won't mind.
We wish we were fools again.
No, that is not what you wish for. What you wish for is to have the previous wishes undone. Because this now means you are going to be fools forever.
They are actually younger than us?
The flower turned us into grown-ups, so we figured we could do whatever we wanted, but I guess that's not exactly true.
And this is when it turns out that they are younger than the two that they were trying to give advice to, and them two seem legitimately annoyed, which they should be. Imagine someone younger than you telling you how to do your job. Or not even a job, but just trying to boss you around pretending to be something they're not. It can get infuriating sometimes, I can say from personal experience. But that's not important. We see that the moral of the lesson is being learnt by the three youngins, and this is what annoyed me as well. I'm going to go on a little tangent rant here. As I say, a lot of the fandom have been waiting for the Cutie Mark Crusaders to do the whole grown-up thing, and now that we're at the end of the series and essentially what is the end of the show before it all changes, I was fully expecting them to have at least had the Cutie Mark Crusaders have grown, not as characters, but both as characters and physically. So when we got to see them as adolescents, that was lovely as a visual representation, an official one. But the fact that at the end they basically end up as foals again, kind of left a little sour taste. It's like, you had all that potential and all the possibilities, and you kind of just set it all back to zero, and it kind of just ruined it a little bit for me. But it was to prove a point, and we now know what they will look like when they grow up. Scootaloo's wings I don't have much hope for, because they still stayed absolutely tiny. But they all laugh it off at the end. They manage to arrange another play date, and they end on the note of, "We'll let you come over, only if you have a proper adult with you." Ha 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 ha. End of the episode. And that really is an underwhelming conclusion to what this could have been. You could have had all three of the sisters encountering what their younger counterparts, I say three sisters, I'm counting Rainbow Dash in that because she basically is. But imagine what the reactions would be if Sweetie Belle and Rarity got to have a conversation with Sweetie Belle essentially as a teenager, and the same with Apple Bloom and Scootaloo. The fact it was kept with just Twilight and Fluttershy kind of takes away the power of the coming-of-age story of the Cutie Mark Crusaders. We now know what they're going to look like as teenagers. Them two do. But it just sells it short in my opinion, and that is how we end the episode, really. Just them all laughing at Appaloosa train station. there's not much I can say about the episode. It probably was littered with references and cameos in the background because there were certain ponies that looked way too non-generic to just be background ponies. And so, any of you in the comments can tell me, then please do, by all means. I'm gonna have to say it though, in terms of what I'm gonna give this episode out of 10, this one, middle of the road, it just sticks at a 5. It doesn't have enough to make it stand out. Seeing the Cutie Mark Crusaders as teenagers is what saves it from being a 4 or a 3. Because for what is essentially the last, or potentially the last Cutie Mark Crusader episode, it's just got nothing to it to make it a standout last episode. And I know that's probably by intention, but in this last season they should be trying to pull out all the stops. I'm hopeful for the 3-part ending because first time we've had that happen. Normally it's 2-parters, and all this buzz has been going around that the ending is going to be a 3-parter. So I'm looking forward to that. I have no idea how I'm going to do the reaction, whether I'm going to do it as a 1-hour chunk or if I'm going to break it up into the 3 episodes. I probably will do that so you guys don't get too bored. But what did you think of this episode? What did you think of the last Cutie Mark Crusader episode? Let me know down below. And until the next video, guys, bye-bye.